Do you ever worry what would happen to your creative output and sense of creative identity if you stopped abusing stimulants and substances? Now, I'm sure you've heard way too much about flow states, dopamine detoxes, and the dangers of caffeine addiction to last you a lifetime. So don't worry, we're not going to be having that stale and boring conversation yet again. It's my strong conviction that if we're going to talk about maximizing creative output, then really we're talking about the necessity of solidifying a genuine creative identity. And if we're going to solidify a creative identity, we need to do a deep exploration of your unconscious mind and your deeply held insecurities. This video is going to be talking about questions of worthiness and performance and finding a healthy balance between authentic creative expression and the potential dangers of externally stimulated and externally enhanced creative compulsion. This video is my direct response to a wonderful question received from Ariel, which I'm going to bring up for you right now. Ariel asked me, how can we take a step towards healing addiction when it is wrapped up in our productivity and ability to create? What do we do when we've been using an external source to focus, achieve our goals, all of which exists at the core of our identity and sense of self-worth? Ariel, thank you for your question. Before I respond directly, there was another comment, which actually I'm going to bring up right here, just briefly. That's her expansion. You can see that what she's really talking about is what do we do in regards to maintaining a sense of self-worth in that uncertain in-between zone where we recognize that our best creative works are built upon something like a caffeine addiction, a sugar addiction, maybe a nicotine addiction, or something else pharmaceutical or maybe illicit. It is one of the most common cliches in all of the creative space that people have their vice of choice when it comes to dropping into the flow state and being in that genuinely self-actualizing, creative wonderland of performance and productivity. But let's go into the shadows to bring a full resolution before we actually look at the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts practical advice. And I will use myself as the example, as the mannequin on the stage, because why not? It's something which is really close to my heart. I'm a deeply creative person. My favorite types of people are also deeply creative people. Every single client that I work with, they're this kind of person. So let's put myself on the line. I'm currently 3.5 years sober from drink, drugs, and cigarettes, which means that they are not my vices of choice, but I do enjoy one strong cup, and I mean a strong cup, of black coffee in the morning during a fasted state as I read for 3 or 4 hours. I do this most mornings. I don't really ever go beyond 2 cups of coffee in the day. I have maybe a few cups of tea later on, but generally speaking, I eat a pretty organic, healthy diet. I stay well hydrated, I go to the gym 4 or 5 times per week, and I'm a pretty healthy, integrated young man. But caffeine is something which I've always had a bit of a problematic relationship with, so let's strip back the layers to make it something which is relevant to you. Let's play the game of follow the why in regards to our worries and my personal insecurities of what would happen if I stopped drinking caffeine and wasn't as creative as I'd like to be. Let's play it out. So it's like a therapy session for myself on camera, a bit weird, but hopefully it's useful. Okay, I'm going to go with a worry to begin with. I worry what would happen if I stopped drinking caffeine in the morning. Why would I be worried about that? Well, I'd be worried that I wouldn't be able to get the most out of my hours, and I wouldn't be as sharp with my reading or with my writing. Okay, so what would happen if that were to be the case? What if I wasn't clear and sharp and wasn't getting the most out of my morning? Well, I'd feel like I'm wasting my time. Okay, what would happen if I'm wasting my time? Well, if I'm wasting my time, then I'm probably wasting my potential. And what's happening if I'm wasting my potential? Well, if I waste my potential, then I'm wasting my life. And what happens if I'm wasting my life? I might as well be dead. It's a bit dramatic and all the emotion isn't quite there, but that is actually the core worry, the core insecurity behind not having frequent access to the flow state. It may sound really dramatic. I'll give a different example. Someone who's in the habit of waking and baking, they have a substance which I'm not going to mention out loud, but something that you roll up and smoke, and it's associated with the color green. They could make the same argument based on their personal moral compass of that being something which is okay to do because it receives a certain level of creative inspiration. That's what comes through, and then there's a creative output. But if you were to trail back the wires and do that little shadow work exercise, in most cases, for most creative people, you will find that your heavy leaning towards stimulants is about your insecurity or desire for security in a creative identity which authentically expresses in the world. I'm right there with you. I truly believe, and you can see this as an unhealthy belief, or you can see this as a self-actualizing potential, that if I am not using my hours wisely, and if I am not tapped into a clear-minded state more often than not, then I am simply fucking around and wasting my opportunity on this earth. It is a truly disgusting idea that I wouldn't use this incredible opportunity as this man that I am, with whatever creative, emotional, spiritual, wonderful capacities that I may or may not possess, or could improve upon, and would let that go to waste. So for me, it's not a question of which stimulant do I choose, it's a question of becoming a flow state junkie, because for me to tap into those flow states means a higher likelihood that I won't be wasting my life doing things which neither feel very good, they just don't feel very good to not be in a flow state, or be doing work which is unfulfilling for you, but at a deeper sense, I'm actually looking for security in my creative identity. Something that I notice when working with people one-to-one, again, as I mentioned, every single person that I work with is a creative of one form or another. They're usually quite intelligent people. They might be artists, they might be dancers, they might be musicians. They're either very physically intelligent, or they're more a spiritually intelligent kind of creative, channely, mystical type. This question of choosing to be someone who is outside of the normal narrative creates a natural conflict. You've seen this in yourself as you start to identify as someone who's a bit weird, a bit edgy, a bit out there, thinks a bit differently. That's the beginning stages of that process. But the higher level of that process is a genuine self-honoring, self-respecting, self-loving core belief that creativity is not something which is all that common. It's a controversial idea. To be creative and to have creative potential is potentially something which every human has the possibility to pursue. But to be a creative person full time, to be someone who prioritizes their authentic voice and finds a way to give meaningful contribution to the world in a way which is energetically and financially an ideal, right? Something that actually works, something which isn't just starving artist territory, but genuinely makes the world better. As you progress through your 20s and your 30s, you will notice that the creative friends that you used to be friends with, they tend to drop off, they tend to give up, they tend to lose their ability to maintain that forward sense of momentum, not because they lack the caffeine or they lack the nicotine or their latest nootropic isn't working. It's because all of those behaviors are a superficial level of expression built upon a sense of creative identity. The truly creative person, and I've seen these people in one-to-one space time and time again, the truly creative person will do whatever they can in whatever situation they find themselves in, with substance or without substance, to make the most of that innate individuation drive. They need to express. They literally get sick. They wither. They get depressed. They are bubbling with creative energy. And caffeine or sugar or nicotine or something like Ariel or Ritalin or modafinil or something which is more illicit and illegal, they're ways that we can typically tap into those states with higher reliability, but don't get lost in the idea that that's the thing itself. What we're really after, and if we were truly honest with ourselves, we're after the ideal heaven and the avoidance of the worst hell imaginable. For the creative person, the ideal heaven is to be authentic. It's to be a genuine person, based on their own definition, based on their, interestingly, this is the next point, based on their ability to perform or output an internal sense of experience or an internal vision of the world into something which is tangible. And the hell which every creative person is running away from is conformity, obviously. No new information right there. But it's also a sense of being worthless. It's a sense of having had something beautiful and let it slip through your fingers. In the initial stages of waking up to creativity and your innate creative power, you don't realize how special that gift actually is, because younger people tend to have more of that gift at the surface, even if it's not one of their core identifying traits. We're encouraged to experiment. We're encouraged to be creative and try out many different things. Very few people will continue that thread through the whole life. And if you maintain that thread, you realize how special it is. And in realizing that you have got something beautiful in your hand, like a small exotic bird that needs caring for and needs some protection from the world, and every now and again will fly off and progressively, with love, attention, nourishment, and healthy habits, will be such a beautiful songbird to delight the world, but still needs that nurturing. There's a period where you are genuinely terrified that something might happen to that bird, or maybe you drop into a vice or an addiction, and you're the one that crushes it yourself. That's real shadow territory. This is where typically the creative madness, creative genius, addiction, shadow zone becomes very apparent. It's when you get to the other end of that that you start to have a genuinely robust sense of creative identity, which is neither too inflated nor too paranoid about it falling away. And yet here I am, having given the example that if you follow back the string of whys and the insecurities, I don't like not drinking coffee in the morning, my nice mug of coffee on a fasted stomach to unlock my creative potential, because I worry that if I don't do that, I will be wasting my life and I might as well be dead. It's a really strong conviction, and it's going to be so unpalatable and laughable to most people, but you're not most people and you're still watching this video, so what can we do about this in terms of actual creative performance while being aware of healthy substance limitation? An idea that comes up in the theory of multiple intelligences by Howard Gardner. I think I've actually got it here, so I will just bring it right up. There we go. This book, I'm trying not to hold up too many books in this series, because it's a question and answer series, but multiple intelligences, I think he has 9 different intelligences, is that based on his original research, fantastic theory, read it for yourself, for something to be classified as an intelligence, it needs to have a socially useful, performative aspect. What this means in everyday language is that an intelligence must be performed. It's not enough to have an internal experience and not externalize it. Sure, if you were just truly a lone person on an island, that's all you'd have. But when it comes to something like a musical intelligence, it's the performance which is the litmus test of how talented you actually are. In something like a mathematical test, your mathematical ability performs on the question or the challenge or the problem, and it's the same with physical intelligence. You might not think of it as a performance. With physical intelligence, you might think of a stage show or an athletic event. But with physical intelligence in regards to moving through the space, you can notice, especially from a bioenergetic perspective or a mechanical perspective, that the way that someone holds himself and the way that somebody, that their gait, their carriage, their posture, everything about them expresses their level of physical intelligence. They will have a level of integration which is obvious to the trained eye, or lack of integration because they're a dissociated, neck up kind of person with way too much anxiety in their head. And of course, all the problems are, I don't want to digress, but the point is, an intelligence is a performance. So we're not wrong for focusing on maximizing our creative potential based on our output. It's one of the most tragic stories or tragic cliches when you speak to the creative person who isn't writing their poetry, who isn't painting their artwork, who doesn't have a daily practice, but will still hold on to an old identity construct that they are indeed the creative person, and with all love and with all compassion, you can give them a hug and say, brother, sister, you haven't made anything in 3 years, what the fuck are you talking about? We judge each other based on performance and output because that's what we have when we're fundamentally disconnected from each other unless we're in a crazy non-dual cosmic state. We only have externalizations and performances to go off, even if it's an energetic performance of a certain vibe. Something needs to be externalized. When it comes to worthiness and performance, this creates a bit of complexity, and I hope you're following where this comes relevant to, obviously, substance management and maximizing creative potential. For a creative person to have a sense of worthiness, they need to have enough repeated experience with positive reception of their performance in the outer world. This means people saying nice things, usually and very often it means family and friends saying very nice things to begin with, but then expanding an audience, creating a sense of many people value me and love me and care about me in this creative identity because they've fought hard to earn that. They've quit their 9 to 5, they've lived a different life for however many difficult years, and now they're at the point where, oh my goodness, I'm a creative person and people think highly of me, but the truly creative person isn't satisfied with that because they are fundamentally driven by their innate drive, their internal drive to do something beautiful and magnificent and brilliant. So they will go against the crowd where it's appropriate to do something which is visionary. They will go beyond practice and go to like an original performance, or hopefully an original performance. I don't know how many creatives truly unlock originality. That's a question for a different day. We're often imitating and copying and subconscious memory fragments, but the point that I'm trying to make there, worthiness is bound to performance, and we are falling into a shadow trap if we can believe that we can sidestep the externalization of an internal feeling or an internal expression. We are social creatures and we require social relationships to confirm our sense of identity. There is no self without the other. When it comes to two creative people in a room, they naturally, not only do they magnetize, but they start dancing and they literally start vibing with each other. They're vibrating with each other. They're really engaged with each other's perception of the world. It doesn't even matter if it's a completely different medium. They just get each other, and they get each other because they're willing to perform externally. And if their performance is dependent upon something like having a coffee together, is that really such a bad thing? This is where we get to the punchline of this video. I can't dictate to you what level of substance and what type of stimulant is appropriate. I have my own strong bias, which I will make transparent. The reason I quit drink and drugs when I was 22, nearly 4 years ago, is, well, I'm 26 right now if you're interested, but I did it just before my 23rd birthday. The reason that I quit those substances is that from about the age of 15, when I first started rolling up the green and smoking it socially, and then at a variety of intensities all the way up to age 22, until the moment when I was in a hippie camp in Portugal, and it's wake and bake territory, and I see all these so-called creative people waking and baking and strumming on a guitar and singing Kumbaya, and I wanted to join in because even though I was already feeling a bit unpalatable towards the whole process, I didn't want to be left out, and I thought, wow, I can just take it easy, man, just relax and chill out. You're in Portugal on a cool hippie farm, just, glide through life. I found it so repulsive because I could not avoid the truth that every experience, and I mean every experience of that substance, left me feeling dumber, weaker, foggy, and dissociated from my body. A sense of stimulation and a sense of heightened arousal doesn't mean integration when it comes to that substance, in my personal experience. And this is the reason why I ask for that substance and other substances to not be present in a one-to-one container if I'm working with someone for 4 months. 4 months of sobriety is the minimum requirement because it allows us to really unlock the sense of creative identity without any of the common crutches or distraction mechanisms to get us towards something which is habitual but may not be the whole future. I have a very strong conviction that I am unlikely to ever return to smoking that substance in my life again. I may drink alcohol in the future in a healthy, moderate way, but I really don't imagine it anytime soon because my core value is clarity and honoring my potential. I really do try my best to bring out the brilliance that I am privileged and lucky to be a part of this whole experience. I truly love myself in that way, and I want to amplify that into the world to make the world a better place in whatever fractional way that I can. And for me, drink and drugs is a complete distraction and a waste of time and an active disrespecting of the clarity that I could bring forwards if I wasn't on those substances. But this isn't everyone's experience. Some people will swear by the fact that taking a certain substance will put them into the creative state, and this gets even more complicated if we're talking about things like Adderall or Ritalin or any kind of ADHD medication. It's something which I've worked with before as I've helped people taper off and I've helped people come off a variety of different substances. There's always an insecurity period where you can't quite be certain if you'll be the same person on or off the drug or substance. You just have to experiment. That is the bottom line. There's a spectrum of substance abuse, and just like food or water, we need it every single day to exist. But there's clearly a point when we're dehydrated, and there's clearly a point when we're drowning ourselves. I don't know how many people have drank themselves to death with water, but I'm sure it's happened. Obesity is a more obvious example. We need to find the healthy ground. And for most creative people, although ideally we could be truly alchemical beings who tap into that creative state with no external stimulus, we're still humans. We are looking for ways to enhance our potential. We're actively seeking ways that we can minimize those down states where we're not doing much, and the creative person is particularly attuned to the importance of that. It's up to you to decide what's healthy for you. I'm of the personal conviction, in my own experience and in the experience of helping people come off much harder substances or heal really dark, traumatic childhood wounds, that if you're working through something like an abusive situation and your abusive situation was protected by a substance abuse and we've already taken away, say, the drink, and now we're looking at the core wounds of the inner child, and you're going through nightmares and experiences of isolation and apathy and the dark night of the soul, metaphorically speaking, that having a few cups of coffee a day or having a few too many biscuits is really not too much of an issue. We don't need to get extreme, we don't need to get ascetic, and we don't need to become the most straight edge of all straight edge, sober-minded, creative individuals. Otherwise, we feel like we're faking it. It's up to you to decide what is the healthy amount and what is the experiment that you could run to really tap into a place where you just see, am I the same person without coffee or whatever substance it may be? And sometimes it might not be worth it. It genuinely might not be worth going through the process of detoxing yourself or staying away from a substance that you enjoy. But who am I to say this and then also have a strong conviction that when it comes to a certain type of smokable, that is a dumb thing to do, and I don't agree with it in the slightest. I think it's a dangerous drug. Not that it hasn't got medicinal effects, not that there isn't a whole other side of intentional usage, but intentional usage is far from common usage, and common usage is typically a cover-up for something else which needs looking at. That's my strong conviction. You're welcome to disagree, and with whichever substance that you go towards, really remember that we're not talking about substance and we're not talking about output necessarily. We're talking about identity. We're talking about the shadows that wrap around our sense of insecurity when it comes to being a creative person in the world. And I suppose the core question of every inner child who has been hurt when they've tried to express their creative potential is, why does no one pay attention? Why is mom or dad not giving me the attention I need? Or if you do get the attention, I want more. Every creative person wants more because they believe that their vision is worth sharing. If you focus in on the question of identity and allow that to be the core which magnetizes your attention, you spend your dozens of hours in that introspective space to define who you are in your unique creative blueprint. You define your medium, you bring forwards your message, and you find the way to bring that through with minimal harm to your body. For some people, this will mean complete sobriety. I am very doubtful that it's possible to be an Ernest Hemingway or Charles Bukowski style figure and genuinely live a fully integrated, physically vital life while you're drinking every day or whatever it might be. But I just don't think that's a very loving way to treat yourself. It's health at every level. It's self-love at every level. You do what you need to do. I'll do what I need to do. But fundamentally, I think we're on the same page that we have a responsibility here. and we can't fuck around. There's a special creative gift. Not everyone gets it in a way where they can really use that for decades. If you're there and you have it, honor that above all else, and you be the decider of which substances and which stimulants will support you in the long term to be creative in your 80s and your 90s, not die of a heart attack at age 42. I'll leave it there. Really interesting conversation. I could keep going for hours. I actually really enjoyed this. And Ariel, I hope this answered your question. Next episode in Inner Work Essentials. I'll see you over there.